Hola, audiencia, bienvenidos Hoy Dimelo Cinema Club. I'm tonight's host, Jason Ishmael Echoes, and tonight we will be reviewing the 1974 Sam Peckinpah film, Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia. I'm joined by our illustrious panel of co-hosts, Don Dino Cizzini, Kris the Professor. We got the fly from the movie Bring Me the Head from Alfredo Garcia. Real happy to have him. And of course, Steve Des TV. So let's jump right into this, guys. So like I said, this movie came out in 1974. It's what's considered by Sam Peckinpah to be his favorite film he ever worked on, because he did it away from the studio system, and he didn't have any big money backers, and he shot this thing in Mexico or whatever. So he was able for the first time to really do what he wanted to do. And this is his follow-up to The Wild Bunch. So when this movie first starts for me, right away, it gave me Wild Bunch vibes. Like, I was like, this movie reminds me of The Wild Bunch. Did he direct The Wild Bunch? I was like, yeah, of course he directed The Wild Bunch. It also gave me Badland vibes. And I had paused the film and look up Badlands, and he also directed that. And it gave me some other vibes and some other films, too. From what I learned doing a little bit of research about the film is that Brian De Palma was very inspired by this film in 1974, because there really was nothing else like it, apparently. And it inspired his take on Scarface. Because this movie was very violent for 1974. There wasn't a lot of like decapitation back then, and there wasn't like a lot of like desecrated bodies and heads running around the film, which is it's a very gritty film. So there's a lot to talk about too. It turns out it's very controversial because it came out in 1974, and there wasn't anything quite as violent as this on the scene at that time. So let's jump right into it. How about Kris the Professor? Let's get your first impression.
So when watching this movie at the beginning, it totally had like the 70s vibe. I did not think that the main character, Warren Oates, is that right?
Yep.
Yeah,
that's right.
I did not think he was going to be the main character. I thought the two guys that were, the main two Americans that were looking for the head, that they were the guys that were going to be, the whole story is going to be around them, and that he was like a character actor in it. He has an iconic voice. There's definitely something about the graveliness of his voice that I thought was important throughout the movie and kind of kept you going, because there's not really a whole lot of redeeming qualities about anybody in this movie. There's no one I was really rooting for. Maybe a little bit the woman, but I don't even know about that. But throughout the movie, I definitely got that 70s. It had like that typical 70s sound editing as someone's walking through dirt or as a gun is fired. There was a lot of things like that was very, very like Dirty Harry in Mexico, but I dug it. I dug this film.
I think that's pretty accurate. Dirty Harry in Mexico, sure. Dino, what about you? What's your first impression?
Yeah, I had not seen this before. I was also kind of not knowing what to think or who to follow as the main character, Benny being the Oates character. I thought maybe he was just going to lead to another, character, or, we were going to actually be following, what was his name? Is it Bernardo? Alfredo Garcia. Sorry, I thought maybe we were actually going to see Alfredo Garcia and him trying to escape everyone. Like it was going to be one of those films, but that didn't happen clearly. But I feel the same thing about you guys. Like the sound editing was right there with that time period. Like the slapping, anything of that was just like everything was the same. I enjoyed him talking to, spoiler alert, I enjoyed him talking to the head, as he starts getting crazy, as he loses what he figures out, like he didn't need that money, and it was too late. He found out too late that he actually would have been happy with a woman than getting the head and the money. And that reminds me of, I'm glad you brought up the Scarface thing. I didn't know of that, but also so many other movies and shows. I mean, The Wild Bunch, everyone a bunch of directors always bring that up as like a time where movies shifted, right? Like the squids and all that kind of
Hmm.
squibs and all that jazz. And the one thing that I thought of when he was talking to the head was from the show Deadwood. And I don't know if you guys have seen it, but in it, the main kind of bad guy kind of turns decent enough guy. Like they, it's like there's a bounty for bringing in Indian head and all that. So there's a head in a box, and throughout a whole season, dude is just talking to to this head in a box that we never see. Same thing, with the head in a bag, we never see it, and it's just like it reminds me almost of like being at confession, right? In that little place with the priest and that they can have just his own honest dialogue and conversation with his dismembered head. So I really loved that. Was part my favorite parts in the movie was him just having this conversation with his head in a bag.
What's in the box?
What's in the box?
Yeah, there's a little bit of that, I think. Yeah, man, this thing kind of had a lot of twists and turns that I didn't really see coming, and I was like, oh man, I don't really know where this is going. I'm afraid. A fly on the wall. What says you about your first impression?
Oh my goodness! I thank you. This was my directorial. My film debut was this particular movie. I'm a big fan, big huge fan. No bias at all. I'll admit a greater performance between a man and a sack since Castaway. Definitely a better performance, better chemistry than that. I really dig this movie. Not gonna lie. Definitely did not expect. I too thought that we were gonna see Mr. Garcia in this movie because I really wanted to know. Okay, how old is this girl and how old is Mr. Garcia in comparison? So I know who to root for in this film. But all in all, yeah, it's great that he kind of leaves you on this movie was definitely 2 steps ahead to my fly brain, with my really tiny fly brain. So I guess I'll leave it at that. I think we could open up to the discussion much more in greater detail. I also have a partner with me as well. Would you like to indulge us with your initial thoughts?
I might as well. I think this is a groovy little movie. This is also my Peckinpah debut. I've never seen any of his films before. Honestly, I think that this is kind of a harbinger to like all the weird stuff that we see in the 70s. Because I feel like Divergent. What's that other film? Like, there's a lot of stuff that comes out in the 70s that really push the envelope, and I think this is a great example, to the point where this almost feels like it's a surreal Western. Like, there's an aspect to it that just doesn't seem realistic, but, like, in a really interesting way. I mean, I don't know if anyone else felt that way, but it's just, like, I had such a hard time just clicking into what was going on in the beginning, but then like as the story progresses and unwinds itself, it just got more and more interesting as like a character study.
This Western definitely had more huevos than spaghetti. I'll say that.
Well, at the very beginning, speaking of Western, at the very beginning when we meet the girl that's pregnant, and the dad, I guess, is like, bring here his head, and they're all dressed in like folklore kind of outfits of cowboys in Mexico. And so I'm like, okay, this is a period Western in Mexico. And then all of a sudden they're in cars, and I'm like, wait, what? And then I'm like, okay, it is the 70s or 60s, wherever this is kind of the time period of it. And I was like, yeah, in certain places they still dress like that, even today, right?
Sure.
So yeah, I definitely thought, I was like, are we watching a period Western? Because that's really cool. And then I saw the cars, and I was like, huh, interesting. Still a Western.
I had the same feeling as you, Dino, and I also had the same feeling as you, Michaela. It gave me fever dream vibes off the bat because it's like the movie just seems very kind of hot and sticky and stinky. And then like by the end of it, it's like it is really stinky. Like for sure, it's stinky. Steve, what says you of your first impression?
So first of all, I just checked, and apparently they spent $1.5 million on this movie.
Oh wow!
It only made 700,000 back.
Oh no, it flopped, huh?
So it flopped.
It got trashed. It was in like the 50. There was like books where it like came out and it was like the top 50 worst movies of the 70s. Like it definitely got trashed when it came out.
Oh wow! So that's pretty interesting.
Similar with Scarface and all those kind of movies of that time period that just weren't quite, like people weren't ready for that, right? Like,
yeah, this thing
Marty
is
McFly.
pretty.
You might not get it, but your kids are gonna love it, type of thing.
Yeah, this thing gives me a lot of like vibes from like Way of the Gun and No Country for Old Men and like Tarantino kind of stuff, like Pulp Fiction. This thing is really, really dirty and it's really grimy. And I mean, of course, this movie. I guess when you think about it, there's no way this movie does well in America in the 70s. I mean, he's carrying around a decapitated head for half the film. You know what I mean? Like, and it's pretty gross. And like, I just keep thinking, like, man, like, this is like some real gritty Western out there. A gritty dude just out trying to get it. You know what I mean? He's just out there he's an expatriate from America, and he's a bartender, and he's like, I'm about to get paid, in a really wild way. And he has a prostitute girlfriend with him. And, like none of these things are like what this is not what dreams are made of, is I think the best way that I can say it.
It's also, it felt like a dirty Casablanca, right? Kind of like, because he's like playing the piano, kind of bartender, and then it's like, out of all the shitholes in Mexico type of thing, right?
For real.
Well, I also think that this is just like an interesting time for America culture in general, anyways, because like the death of America's naivete is usually accredited to this kind of era, because like there's a lot of other films that kind of came out during this time that had like that same kind of violence. And the crazy thing about this film, though, is like for as violent as it was, I never felt it was unnecessary. Does that make sense? You know, like for as brutal as this film gets, like the violence serves a purpose.
Oh, it's because you weren't there when they put the ice in the sack.
I thought the first scene was brutal. Like that he broke her arm, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that was brutal as hell. Like a pregnant, I thought she was like 17 at the most.
I thought it was his daughter.
Yeah. It is his daughter now.
Yeah, it is.
I thought so.
Yeah.
But then when he like broke her arm, I'm like, Jesus, this guy is like not messing around.
Yeah.
Well, out of wedlock, pregnancy, right? And then who knew? Was Garcia like one of the, that story of just like one of the helpers, right? Was he just because apparently he was suave, right?
He was friends with El Jefe.
Yeah, El Jefe says one of the first lines he says is, he was like a son to me.
Oh,
Give me his head.
Yeah. And he was excited to have the kid because they were like talking about it, and he was proud to be having the child, even though it was in this situation he saw as terrible. He was actually celebrating it while beating up his daughter and trying to find out.
Not during though, not at the beginning. Later, when it's like the baptism, you mean?
Right.
Right, but that's a whole male, error type of thing, right?
Yeah.
I think that.
Yeah. Well, on top of that, wasn't there like funeral going on, or like some like in the beginning, or they were in like a service of some sort or a mass?
Just real religious Mexican Sunday type of thing.
Is that how it is?
That's what I thought.
They're definitely having a baptism when we get to the end of the film.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. But in the beginning, like this weird ceremonial thing that starts off the film that kind of seems kind of like this idea that that we're going to be doing something profane that I think is very interesting. That
You mean when they all meet up in his office in the beginning or before that?
Yeah, like he was talking in Latin, like he was reading the Bible.
Yeah, I thought he was reading the Bible. Yeah.
Yeah,
I wasn't quite sure what was happening. Also, that brings me to the first point I wanted to bring up, Michaela, was that for our Spanish speakers here, for me watching this movie on the archive off the library archive site, it wasn't fully subtitled. Like a lot of the Spanish wasn't subtitled. Now it wasn't like super complicated Spanish. I was able to pick up on a few of the words to kind of grasp like the nature of the conversation. But did you guys have subtitles, or for the Spanish speakers, did you have any trouble interpreting what was?
Oh no! Everything that Benny said in Spanish, I knew 100%.
Sure.
I did. I struggled. I was using like inflection just to understand if it was like argumentative or if it, more of that. But there was subtitles for most of it. But you're right. There were like stretches where they didn't do that. And I wonder why they chose certain lines not to have that.
Yeah.
Didn't they speak in English right after it though? Kind of repeating or explaining what they was just said in Spanish. I can't remember. It's been a couple weeks now.
Yeah, they definitely did it for the first scene with Jefe. Like every so often, he would say the lines in Spanish first, then take a pause, and then he would directly say it to the only white guy in the house in English. So it was convenient, in that sort of way. But I think there was enough context and like stuff for the audience to understand that we didn't necessarily need the translation. Even though I knew every word that Benny said, that was Spanish.
Was there any scene in this movie where Benny wasn't drunk?
No.
Yeah.
That man had to be in order to survive that movie as long as he did.
Yeah. If I was driving to head across the country, I too would need to be inebriated.
Yeah, I was surprised how much like drunk driving happened in this film.
Right, that was my biggest thing.
But like, guys, can we like have a moment to appreciate the slow motion 70s car footage? That stuff was so cool.
I mean, I guess being just on the verge of blackout drunk in the middle of Mexico with no other cars is okay because there are no other cars.
Other people were doing it too. He wasn't the only one drinking that. When they were driving.
I feel like once they got out of like the town, there were maybe 5 cars in all of Mexico. Like that's what it seemed like.
Those cars look like they might have been wrapped around some trees too. They were pretty beat up. All the vehicles in the movie.
Yeah, for sure. It was really easy for people to go off the road and fall in the ditches and go up the. You know what I mean? Like those cars got stuck a lot in this film because everybody was wasted.
Oh, I love those 70s car chases, or just like they have like no traction, so like every kind of like no shock absorbent stuff. It reminds me a lot of. I mean, one that does great is the Blues Brothers, right? That ridiculous car chase through Daily Plaza and all that. Of just like cars always like wiping out or sliding off. Yeah.
So this movie being so gritty, I like to get straight into the nitty gritty and talk about one of the more controversial scenes of the film.
I, as a fly, really appreciate grit. Yes.
Yeah, this thing is true grit. So there is a very controversial. I mean, a lot of this movie was controversial back then. I don't know if it really is controversial now. Before I say that, I forgot to tell you guys why I chose this flick in my initial offering. I chose this movie because I had never seen it before. Well, actually, you guys chose the film, but I'm glad you guys chose the film. It was one of two. But the reason that this was one of the two that I selected for us to watch was because I had never seen it before, and B, it's on Time Magazine's 1001 Films You Must See Before You Die list. So even though this movie flopped, I imagine it's on the list because when it came out, it was one of a kind, and after doing a little bit of reading, it's a real inspiration for a lot of directors who end up making movies that were full-on classics after this thing. So I guess it's an important movie in cinema history for that regard. And, it's also Sam Peckinpah's favorite film that he did in his very storied career. The thing I wanted to ask you guys about with this very controversial film was the rape scene, which I found a little bit confusing. And then I went online to pick up some theories, but I wanted to see what you guys made of that scene because there's some weirdness in it.
Yeah.
What you guys think about that?
I personally thought it was weird how he like took her off into the woods and then they slapped the shit out of each other. And then he like turned around and walked away and she still followed him. It was like and dude, do you guys realize one of those bikers was Kris Kristofferson?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I didn't get that at first. There's a couple people in this movie who I know from other things, but I didn't catch him but yeah, that for me it was an awkwardness to what was happening and like almost like she was resigned to that was happening. Like that was, she was a prostitute clearly. So I don't know if that led into why. I mean, that's definitely I can't imagine that would lead you to want to, be in that kind of situation. But she was willing to do it because I think she thought it was their only way out.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways to interpret it. I consider like maybe she thought she would get. I thought what was going to happen was she went along with it because maybe she wanted to get the drops on him. You know what I mean?
That's what I thought.
And maybe that's part of the plan. I mean, it's all up to the director, I guess, in that regard. But what else did you guys think about that scene? Anybody else?
I think the guy definitely had the upper hand because he had a gun.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just. It's a very. I did really like the awkwardness at play, and like there was like a suspense to it because I did have the feeling that she like Chris said that she had resigned to this position, and that she probably like the way I sensed it was like she knows that she's powerless, and the guy maybe kind of also was like, well, I'd rather not because being just slapped around and whatever, but like he still had the power in the scene purely because like, well, he has the gun, her Benny is also kind of being held without help at the moment, but it was odd that they had a seemingly intimate scene together, she and the biker dude at that moment. It was strange. Definitely a mix of strange emotions.
Yeah, there was a lot going on in that scene. I think it was pretty complicated to say the least, and I think it was made that it was clear that was the intention, to make it complicated and to make the audience feel weird and uneasy about what was happening. I wasn't quite able to put my thumb on exactly what was happening, and maybe that was the point. I don't know.
I was hoping that it would tell me more about the people from all four, I mean, the bikers sort of, but more about those two characters. And I didn't get like a strong sense after that. Like maybe Benny stands up finally and really, he didn't own it like as being like a Superman and that's, whatever, like, I right away though, the vibes, as soon as you saw them on screen, I was like, I know where this is headed. Like 100% I had those vibes the entire time as soon as those two dudes showed up.
For sure.
This is almost like a revenge film before like they were really popular too.
True.
So I think that's part of it, is just like showing how much this character gets screwed over because like JP says, they both had guns. Mm-hmm. So it's just like choosing which frying pan. Like, do you choose the fire or do you choose the frying pan? And I think she chose the frying pan. Because either way, like I don't think Benny's a good enough guy to like I think he can forgive her screwing around, but like I don't think he can forgive her for getting them in that mess in the first place because it was her idea to spend the night out there.
Yeah, it was weird too because was it right after he proposed?
No, that was a little bit after. That was after the shower scene.
Okay.
Yeah.
It didn't get to rape, right? Though Benny came in and stopped it right before.
They were just like starting to get intimate.
Yeah, it's interesting. It reminds which movie is that? Payback. What movie is at the end? It's kind of like I promised her to kill. I promised her I was stop killing people if she stopped hooking. Is that a movie? That I got vibes of
Like
that
that's a
as
bunch of
well.
movies.
Was that, is that True Romance? What is that?
Anyway, point being, it's like that's kind of what I thought. But I thought, I mean, she seemed pretty smart. Like, she knew she was kind of going along for the ride, but also, like all the other characters, we quite didn't really know if she also had her own end game, right? Like, until the very end, I think when she's like, clearly she's trying to find a way to just not actually go and like get the desecrate the grave, right, and do that. So she's constantly trying to find a way to show Benny like, hey, doesn't have to be this. So I think that's all part of kind of her mindset of like, I know we have feelings for each other, whatever, or at least I can play up that to try and maybe we just get lost, right? But
Like
at
her
that point,
shirt.
they already had the Polaroid of Benny, right? That was super interesting because that was like, hey, at this point, you're now a part of us, and if you don't come back, if we don't hear from you, we got your Polaroid, and we're gonna send people after you,
Right.
But yeah, I mean, she was slapping. They were slapping her, but she was slapping back.
Well, I
It's
think
a
she
very I
just
don't know if
too, because like when you're in that situation, like I feel like I genuinely think she chose the lesser of two greater evils, because like
Sure. She was a prostitute also, so she was going to do
yeah,
what she had to do.
to like make him think that she's into him.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that there was definitely some of that in play because it's easy. Like, he'll be nicer if they're on the same page.
She
Right.
has experience having sex with people that she does not want to have sex with.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
I mean,
saying.
as bad as that is.
Yep. That's what I think.
Sorry, Jason. What did you read about it, or what was the consensus, I guess, of that scene, or just the
Just
overall?
like when it came out, it was just a lot of confusion about it, and people tore it apart because they didn't really understand what was happening, and they were saying like, is she consenting to being raped? Like, and then there was this idea that she enjoyed, like, even though she was being raped, she like was going to like try to enjoy being raped, or the idea that maybe Sam Peckinpah was trying to get to his audience. Critics were saying was that in some cases women enjoy rape, and so that's why they kind of tore this movie apart for that scene.
Well, and it's just the way he treats women in general in this film. Like, I have a feeling if I looked into his filmography, I'd see nothing but hate. Like none of the women in this film were treated tenderly at all, at any point.
He shot a grandma.
Right up, but like I'm very curious to see if I looked into his other films if women would be treated the same way.
Why did the one guy elbow that prostitute at the piano?
For no reason.
Because
that was the coldest
thing. It was.
When I saw that, I was like, okay, I'm not. There's nobody to root for here.
Hey man, definitely not as cold when they put that dry ice in that bag with my family still inside.
Because it could very be easy as like, oh, they're gonna slip a Spanish fly in my drink. I think it's one of those, hey baby, you're having a good time, here, have this drink, and then you end up waking up and you don't have your cell phone or your wallet, and you're in a different Spanish speaking country. I've heard it still happens also.
Definitely wouldn't trust anybody in that bar at all. I mean, okay, if I'm gonna be playing devil's advocate, like it's not that he was asking for it. Like, she did like place her hand on that dude's leg, and I'm
about to grab his crotch up for sure.
I mean, that reminds me a little bit, I guess, like Fargo and all that, right? Like, they do get hookers, but then it's just like, kill the hookers, right? Like back to business. And I think that just shows like the level of money the Mexican guy that ordered, for the head of just like boom. What was it? $1 million? Is that what the thing was?
$1.5 million.
And $1.5 million.
Oh well, no, I'm sorry. You mean like the reward?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was $1 million.
$1 million, yeah.
Yeah.
And he was only
And
getting 10 grand.
those guys were part of they had the million. They were offering Benny $5,000 or whatever.
10 grand. Yeah.
But so yeah, they're just like we ain't here to fuck. We're here to do business. So that's what that shows everyone in the bar, right? And it's pretty ballsy where you're not from the country, you don't speak the language really, and you show up and just like cold cock someone like that.
Yeah.
Woo.
There were a lot of people in that bar too. Do you guys know one of the two people was Robert Webber?
No.
Did you ever see 12 Angry Men?
Yep.
Yes.
He's the salesman that's always chewing on his glasses in the movie. He's like juror. I think he's juror 12. He sits right next to the main guy in the. But he was one of those two guys.
Wow, I did not realize and not recognize.
Oh, the one woman that I guess they do kind of have like at the very end is when the girl who had the baby from Garcia tells Benny to kill him, and Benny kills him, and so that's almost that like I don't know if it's not a silver lining, but it's just that he's gone through so much.
Yeah.
And he's just like realized in this quest for money and greed and all of this, I lost everything that I had. Like not just this woman that I maybe loved, maybe didn't, but I was willing to, end up trying to make it work, right?
Yeah.
And so lost that, got beat up, got dragged out, and found out that it wasn't just like $5,000, it was $1 million. So I was cheated out, and then I show up, and clearly it's a horrible person that decided to do this. That basically go kill the father, the baby daddy of
my grandson,
of my daughter. And so he realized. So it's that weird anti-hero. It's and again, it's that time period right there, right? Right around The Man with No Name, Clint Eastwood, all that kind of thing, where it's kind of like these characters that aren't good, but they aren't all bad at the very end or at the core, or at least they have a moral ground, if you will, or or a line they're not willing to cross.
I think the youths call it a pro gamer move.
A what?
A pro gamer move.
Well, I mean, but like that's what makes his character interesting. Is it because he has this moral center, or is it just because he's tired and is ready, like he's been through enough just to get like this suitcase of money? I
think it's a mix of both, because like I do get the sense that like he was willing to do all this terrible shit just to actually finally do right by what's her name? The female lead. See, I'm sorry. You could just cancel
Alita, I think her name was.
Yeah, Alita, like doing right by her, and finally for just the 10,000 grand that he did not know was like actually slim pickings compared to what this asshole's head was.
He figured it out though. Like there's a reason why he goes up to them and goes, "How much is this really worth?"
Yeah, but that's
you're going to tell me.
Yeah, but that's like after he pretty much loses everything. So at that point, he just goes guns a blazing because he has nothing else to lose. Mm-hmm. Like it was no longer about the money. It was the principle, as they say.
I mean, even the Mandalorian kind of does that, where it's like, you get the money and then you start asking questions. It's like, no questions. You got the money, just walk away. Right. And so there's that kind of moment at the end. Shit, the baby's in the basket, right? The Mandalorian, baby in the thing. And it's like, could walk away with close to $1 million, could go wherever, could join Red Fox in Africa, right? Any of that, but decides to be like, I can't. There's just something.
It's not selling his soul.
That final little straw, right? So
I think that's partly the reason why this film maybe didn't do good initially. I don't think the world or maybe the country was quite ready for that gray anti-hero thing that we're so accustomed to now. You know, there's so many great stories now that do that.
The Nixon era.
Well,
Say it
I mean,
again?
that's what I was saying earlier. Just culturally, this is such an interesting piece of time just because of all that's going on, because this is like the first time we really don't trust our governments. Like a lot of the systemic stuff is coming up to the forefront in a way that's very visible. You know, this is like the first time in a long time where America's not prospering because of like the gas shortages and all of that. Because like I feel like there's just like a whole bunch of other films too, like and Wild Bunch included, where like these are technically like genre films that are being shown as like double features, but like at the same time we see this kind of shift in cultural awareness, you know, because like the same thing can be said for like the literature of the time too, because like a lot of these things were kind of based off of these gritty pulp novels.
Yeah, this thing is a Western, essentially. I mean,
it really is. They could change it into a Western and it would easily do that. I agree with you.
Yeah.
I felt more like a voyeur and less empathetic to the characters. You know, I felt like I was watching something happen as opposed to like having feelings into what's going on, you know?
I really like the description. I think that it's almost like you're a fly on the wall.
Yeah.
Or
a bag.
Fly on a head, if you will.
Dude, half the budget had to be spent on that girl's shirts, right? Like every scene they were like, let's take off her shirt. Let's rip off her shirt. Like she was out there. I was watching this movie and my girlfriend kept coming into the room and every time she's like, what are you watching? This woman's naked the entire time. Is this a porno? And I was like, no.
No. So funny story. They said on her first day on set, Alicia was like, her first day having to take her shirt off on set. She told the entire cast and crew, "You guys better get used to seeing these things," because she knew she was going to have her shirt off for most of the movie.
She was very proud. Yeah.
So she's like, "Get used to it, guys. My shirt's staying off while we shoot."
I'm not complaining. I'm just saying it was a lot.
It was a lot. I mean, this whole movie is a lot. There's just, but I think another reason I think this movie doesn't do great is because it sort of starts off pretty interesting, and then there's a patch of like character development where it gets pretty slow. And I was like, I'm hoping this isn't the whole movie. This thing has to pick up for it to have made this list in any way, shape, or form. Because I was getting a little bit bored, like the middle 15 minutes of this film, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah.
Which leads me to my next question. Oh, did you have something to say, Fly or Michaela?
No, like I was agreeing. I said I feel that about the 15 minutes in between.
Yeah. Because once our guy Benny gets a taste of fucking blood, like he goes effing AWOL, suddenly getting cojones and be like, I'm tired of this shit. I'm gonna do it my way. God damn it.
But I did appreciate how Peckinpah sort of cuts together these scenes in the beginning of like the commute, like, oh, the plane travel, the car, the plane, the car, the guys leaving the building. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. Like, I feel like more directors should steal that from Peckinpah. Maybe a lot do, and I just don't notice it. Maybe like Steven Soderbergh does it too. I don't know. That kind of leads me to my next point. Are there any scenes in this thing that really stand out for you guys, or a favorite scene, or something that goes, oh, wow, that's interesting, or maybe I never saw that before, or didn't see that coming?
The scene where she's sitting in the shower, it's the most beautiful thing in the entire movie. You know, like I don't know if it was like a combination of her performance and him just really understanding that moment. But like there was just something so wonderfully intimate that you don't capture the rest of the film. That just like the tone, like her with the mascara running down, and it's like the close up over his shoulder. Like that's gonna be stuck in my brain forever.
I totally agree, and I'm happy they put it as a final shot in the credits because I'm like, this is a great shot, and it means so much in that little gritty, dirty, nasty Mexico motel room that had no door.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up as well, because I'm not necessarily sure if it's the scene, but the very first thing that I thought when you said like, hey, what's the scene, and going back to the rape, which they go to the hotel and she's had her shirt ripped, and this is where now I think of like people thought that she was into rape. Like their reaction when they go into that hotel or motel and they look at her like she's a prostitute and she's a dirty whore, and they're gonna refuse to give them a room, right? Isn't that what happens? And then he like about to fuck them up, kind of like, you have no idea what we just went through, right? Like how dare you type of thing. I think that's what's powerful, and that's why right after that is her in the shower. And so that's why now I'm like, who the fuck are we reviewing this movie that thought that her or just prostitutes in general would be cool with rape? I don't know. Sorry, I just had this visceral kind of bring in the shower thing and the hotel right after that, and the silence. Right, there was a lot of scenes just in silence, and then again, sometimes that's why it did feel kind of slow. But that moment, it's like you don't have to say anything, right? Like they did such a good job of showing those emotions without, actually having to flat out say it. And so on that same line of why, Jason, you keep bringing it up of like why it's not, it was reviewed badly, or back then it wasn't seen as a, I'm wondering if we've seen so much film that's been somehow by filmmakers from, people that were inspired by this or got motivation or whatever to do other movies, and we've seen those movies. We've seen Tarantino, Kill Bill, the revenge kind of flick from stuff like that of being, the Uma Thurman even being raped and then she's out for revenge. That us watching this now is kind of like, we get it, we understand that there's certain, as dirty and grimy this film is, and it's not beautiful 100% of the time, or even looks great 100% of the time, just from the how cheap it was made and all that. It's like, we get it, because since then we've had all these other films that have been able to evolve themselves, that us looking back is like, oh wow, there's really something great in this film. So I don't know if that's us looking back that we're able to appreciate the stuff that Sam Peckinpah brought to the screen, and what the performance and stuff like that. Anyway,
I think so. I mean, this is a new movie for all of us, right?
Yeah, it just kind of clicked something in my brain, and I just had to kind of bring that out.
No, I think that's a pretty.
What's interesting about her reaction too is it's not hysterics. In that shower scene, it is a moment of calm and clarity, and I think that's why they didn't correlate it, because at the time usually those kind of scenes would involve the actress breaking down with wild, heart-wrenching cries and sobs, and she's just sitting there. She's even trying to like smile it off towards me, and I think that's what makes it so beautiful. It's like, it's the calm that they captured there.
Yeah, I would agree with that, actually. Anyone else?
I was expecting a lot of the time, I think we're wired nowadays to expect plot twists, and I felt like a lot of times where I thought something was going to be different, it didn't happen, and I kind of liked it because I'm not used to that. So like when she says how Alfredo dies, I was like, no, that's not going to be what happened. He's still going to be alive. Like clearly, like she's just saying that because she doesn't want him to go looking, or not the way that she thought. The other big one is when his head's missing, when he's like digging down into the body. I was like, there's going to be some kind of twist here. Either it's going to be a different person in there, and there wasn't. There was a head missing. And they got clonked over the head, and then they wake up, and that scene's crazy, where they wake up covered in dirt and she's dead, spoiler alert. But that, to me, that was interesting about this film. I didn't feel like there were a lot of plot twists, and I didn't mind it because I'm so used to trying to figure out what's going on in the movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I didn't see any of that coming. I didn't think they were going to get buried alive.
My favorite scene, which is funny, because I also hate it, because I thought it was way too fucking long, was that final standoff on the road with the Garcia family, where he's like, will you keep the goddamn money, you damn idiots? But I worked too damn hard for this head. And then here comes the bus. The wheels on the camion come rolling down, and they're like, okay, you can go through. You can go through, and you're thinking, like, okay, are guns gonna come out of the fucking bus? Are they gonna shoot this bus? How is our man Betty gonna get out of this mess? And then the two assholes from the bar show up out of nowhere playing dumb gringos lost on this road. I would have thought that the family would have been smart enough to not put their guard down. It's like, wait a minute, I may not be racist, but what's up with these three gringos over here? And then they got mowed down, and then poor Johnny got shot, and poor Johnny died. And he takes it out on Betty because Johnny dies, and yeah, only one who makes it out is that poor decrepit old fuck and Benny. Yeah, that scene to me, way too fucking long. It definitely isn't as long as I think it is, because in my mind I was like, this is fucking 30 minutes going on.
It felt like a long time.
But
yeah, I gotta disagree with you, Fly. That's actually my favorite scene of the film.
Oh my gosh, it's mine too. I just hate that it was so long.
Oh, okay.
You know, for a fly doesn't live long, so that's why it's probably just way too long.
This is true.
That makes sense.
What do you think they put in the bag to get the flies to stick around there the whole time? There was no CGI in that.
Probably some meat.
Yeah.
Honey?
I think it was a cat because he fucking tells the kid it was a cat.
Oh no.
Also, can we quickly address what is El Jefe going to do with the head of Alfredo Garcia?
He needs to confirm, right?
Yeah, but
on a post out front.
Yeah,
I'm not
put it like.
You definitely can't see it since my face is just plastered over this circle. But my special partner here did some pelvic thrusting on that head. And I'll admit, you know, that man is definitely petty enough to do that. I mean, yes.
So it's two things, I think. One is just pure revenge, just primal, like, fuck you up. And two is literally, I think, to put his daughter in her place. Like, you ever try anything like this again, this is what's gonna happen. I mean, that's what I say. It's the power.
I mean, he did bring the daughter into the office with him, right?
Right. It's really, I think, it's multiple levels. One, hate that guy, you know, on multiple levels. One, clearly the daughter had feelings for him. Clearly, he was a player, right? Because apparently he did that everywhere he went. But she liked him or loved him, whatever.
She wouldn't tell on him.
Huh?
She got her arm broken. She wouldn't tell on him right away.
Right. And so there's that. And so there's just him. I want him dead. I want him decapitated. I want him, like, it's a lot. And two, I think it's just, and I'm going to show my daughter who is the fucking boss. And what happens to fuckers that do shit that I don't like. And that includes my daughter. Let this be a message. Because that's why then it's like this baby, and again, the Godfather-esque type of thing, you know, the baby baptism, it's like wholly anew. So it's like he gets a blank slate to work on at that point. Like, now I can raise this boy because my whore of a daughter is nothing to me now. Which is weird if you think about it, because it's like literally her offspring is now your, like, savior, that she's dead to you, type of thing.
And that guy, Jefe, was a complete tata to that baby. He loved that fucking baby.
Only because it was a boy. Like, I feel like if that child had been a girl, like, we'd have a whole different movie. No, like I totally agree. Like I think it was showing a like also like a bit of shaming too. Like, see, this is what happens when you let yourself get in these situations. Good men have to die.
I'm shocked that he did not actually like take the head out himself. And like
I kept waiting for that shot.
I thought that was gonna be the big reveal that we finally get to see his fucking head. You know.
Like,
So there are actual. They did actually shoot the head for this movie, but I guess it didn't make the cut.
Oh man!
Because I found some stills online of the head.
Well, it's kind of like the briefcase in Pulp Fiction, right? That you can't see it; it's just a glow. And what's in the box? You don't have to see it to know that.
You just see the hair.
Yeah.
Remember in that scene?
You guys know you guys know who the kid was washing the
In
car?
case you guys want to see the head, I found right there.
Oh, thank God! Probably for the best if he never actually showed it. I mean, it looks pretty damn real. Like, oh yeah, that's definitely a head that seems better days. But yeah, it was probably for the best we didn't see it.
Dude, if he wasn't, it was about his power, right? Because if he wasn't so rich, he would have been like, bring me Alfredo Garcia so he can pay some child support. Like, it would be a whole different movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it was showing that he was like, it was a respect thing and he was like a rich guy and it would have been a different movie. They would have been searching for him for a different reason.
He would be
he
so
said he was like a son to me, right?
He found out that Garcia died in a car crash.
And like I also think that's a very interesting statement because like I feel like that's something that you kind of see throughout the film is like the different wealth disparities. Like the farther they like go to desperately cling for this money, like they keep going into like worse and worse conditions. Like they keep taking steps back. And like when you compare the bar to like that hotel to where she started, you know, like isn't that like a weird like kind of bit of symbolism that you see in that is like how you just make a bad decision with the wrong guy and you just get dragged down. Like we literally watched it get dragged down.
That's a fact. Yeah.
It was the negotiation for Benny was weird too because it was like 10 grand, you know, and like obviously they were getting a lot more money, but in the end it was like, and you have 5 days or you're dead. It's like, what kind of negotiation? I didn't know that going in. 10 grand.
Yeah, right. Like, I thought the same thing. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, I was like, I would not make that deal, dude. Yeah, that's a terrible day. A terrible move.
Well, at that point, it's like, shit, give me a little bit more than 10 grand then. Because, no backing out. Because clearly there, what do? Do you just give up the information then?
They gave him a deadline, man. They lit a fire. That's what happened. But also, like, just for the sake of like story convention, giving someone a shorter deadline adds like higher stakes to the story for us as the audience. Go ahead.
I also thought it was really interesting that he is an expatriate too, because like he's desperately looking for, you know, like it's just very interesting how this like the cycle of poverty is played out here.
For sure. And I did the numbers too to kind of match it up because like I had to do a little conversion math. 10,000 or what did I look up? It was 10,000 was something like $106,000 our money. It converted from pesos or something like that. I had to like work it out. It was
it
like
$1 million pesos or $1 million? I
think it
was dollars, and it was dollars inside the briefcase. But I had to like work it out in pesos to see what he could buy with that money.
Oh yeah.
That 106,000, that conversion from 10,000 would mean like 1 million would be worth like 10 million.
Yes.
You know, that's a huge jump nowadays.
So that guy got money. You would imagine that guy was.
He was a crime syndicate.
Yeah.
Okay, so one last question before we get into final thoughts. Usual question that we do. Was there any character that you liked or that you sort of gravitated toward or that you identified with?
That little blue car. That beat up little blue car.
You loved it or you identified with it?
Both.
Right. That's awesome.
Like, beat up doing the best it can to catch whoever, just doing the best it can.
Yo,
I kind of liked his red beat up Impala that he was that guy. He hit a bus. He hit the side of a bus when he was driving for no reason.
They just don't make cars like they used to, man.
I saw the movie and I don't think they finished making those cars. Are you kidding?
I mean, that car, like, that would be a beautiful car today, like, if it was fixed up and, like, repaired. Because that was, like, a 60-something Impala. It was big. And he hit a bus and kept driving no problem.
Isn't that Tarantino's convertible in Pulp Fiction? Is it an Impala, the convertible?
I don't remember. Maybe. Or I think maybe that was, like, a Bel Air or
It's
something
Travolta's
like that.
car, yeah.
Yeah, but it was actually Tarantino's car.
Oh, his real vehicle.
Yeah, that then got stolen.
Aww.
That's
So
awful.
the character that I liked the most was the old man at the end who didn't die. When I first saw him at the motel or whatever, I was like, hey, man, that's old man Dino. That's what Dino's going to look like when he's an old man. So that's the guy that I identify with the most.
I'll allow it.
You know, my favorite character was that little kid, washing the car. You know who that kid is? You know who that kid is?
Who is
Shia
it?
LaBeouf.
Steve.
Shut up.
Shut up.
What did he say?
I'm not
Shia LaBeouf. It was Even Stevens.
My favorite character in the movie is Benny, but in a very specific scene. That first scene where they have him playing piano and he's talking and kind of just getting in with those two guys. I felt very much like he had like a Sammy Davis Jr. way about him. And that's what I liked. I really, really liked that scene. And I also like his character there. I really thought he was going to be a secondary character in the movie, or like in 5 minutes. I did not think he was going to be the main character.
Well, that's where I got the Casablanca vibes from.
Yeah.
Him just kind of weaving a story out of the top of his head.
Were you guys weird that he rarely took his glasses off in this film? Like, that's not like really a movie star choice. And the weird thing about it is,
Sorry, go on.
The weird thing about it is Warren Oates didn't really have a lot of leading man roles. He had a lot of great movies and a lot of great roles under his belt, and he played for Peckinpah a lot. He was in Badlands and Wild Bunch, and I think maybe Straw Dogs. He was in a lot of movies. But the thing is, he, as the leading man of a film, he kept his sunglasses on the whole time. Who does that?
Jack Nicholson.
Which this thing kind of gave me some Easy Rider vibes and some 5 Easy Pieces vibes.
Yeah, no.
Okay, for me, that bar scene, because that bar scene definitely makes you think that the movie's gonna go a different way, right? Like everyone's new to the game still. We're all trying to figure out who is who and what everyone's doing. Again, I enjoy the scenes with the talking head. Like clearly the head isn't talking, but talking to the head and kind of having a conversation. I just think that's great. So I don't know if that's a character per se.
The head is definitely a character.
Yeah.
Alfredo Garcia is a part of this story.
Yeah.
And a lot of very. I like the girl. I was so devastated when she didn't make it. I was like, it's just that's what really good movies also do to you. Just like when you're like just because she felt like she was the one that kind of was just wanting to get away. Like was just like I can change. I don't need this. Like this is my way out, even without the money. Let's just go. So close. Just so close.
Yet so far.
Dude, so when you said the sunglasses thing, I just typed it in for a random, and Wikipedia came up, and it says the character was reportedly based on Peckinpah himself, and Oates wore the director's sunglasses while filming the scenes of the production. He took his sunglasses.
Wow.
That's crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
That is great.
All right. Well, let's jump straight into final thoughts. Mr. Fly, would you take it away for us?
Alrighty. My final thoughts. My favorite character was, of course, Le Flies. My second favorite character was Unhinged Benny. I think that's when the movie for me really took off. Once Benny had nothing else to lose, like just went at it. It kind of reminded me of the one movie that takes place, I think, in Barbados or something. You guys remember that about the guy, the singer guy who like
Lava
yeah,
Island?
Harder They Fall. Is that what it is?
Mhm.
Yeah, Harder They
Oh,
Fall.
right.
Like that one. It reminds me of that because I said the same thing for that movie where the first two acts slow as hell and I was kind of losing interest, but as soon as you gave my man a gun and a reason to kill, yeah, that movie became movie. That was the movie for me. B plus movie because of the third act.
All right.
I can go ahead and go. I think this is a really cool little piece of film. Like, I think it's kind of a shame that it didn't get the kind of attention it did, but like, I don't think that's what Peckinpah was after. And now I'm very curious to like look into more of his films when I'm like a little bit more mentally prepared for it. But I'm really excited, just because like you can see the influences in something as minor as this one compared to some of his other successes. So I'm excited to see where this goes.
Right on. Right on. Steve, why don't you hit it up for us?
Man, this is one of the first movies that I seriously felt extremely bad for the women. Because what, like honestly, the scene, it started pretty bad already, but the scene where that woman got elbowed at the bar, that was the moment for me that I was like, oh my god, domestic violence is just running rampant in this movie. Uh, so it was definitely a tough watch. Uh, I the moment I started seeing the theme of the movie, I was like, Dino's gonna love this because he likes the good, the bad, and the ugly type stuff. That gives me those type of vibes. I did enjoy that there's some Spanish in it. I didn't get lost. I understood everything. Uh, Not my favorite type movie, but I would definitely recommend it to, old school guys like Dino that like this type of film.
All right. All right.
Well, I guess I'll
I'll,
go just to
yeah, go for it.
follow up on since I was called out there. I enjoyed it. So Peckinpah, I kind of like Jason saying it's on a lot of lists. Wild Bunch was a bunch of lists, and I saw it, and I feel like because I had it like all these directors, all these filmmakers were, everyone's like Wild Bunch, Wild Bunch, Wild Bunch, and then when I saw it, I was like, this is slow. It's long, and I didn't care that much for it. I appreciate it, and so I'm glad I hadn't really heard about this film because I think I would have felt the same way of like, again, they have this to such high regard. Um, but yeah, I feel it was a little bit of a hard watch for me. Um, Maybe it's the elbow to a woman in a bar, elbowing women in a bar or any place is not good. Or throwing chairs at your waffle cook staff. But I will say there are a lot of things that I like about this, and again, there's a lot of things that seeing this I can see were used by other filmmakers and were either taken as templates and over. I mean, there's a movie. What is it? Six heads in a duffel bag or seven heads in a duffel bag? Like
Yep.
it's become a huge thing. So yeah, I I liked it for what it is, but I didn't love it. Although I do enjoy the actual Hispanic people playing Spanish, and not as much as I love Eli Wallach as the ugly. You know,
Sure.
short little Jewish man playing stereotypical Mexican, not kosher, but yeah. So I enjoyed the movie. Would I recommend it? I'd probably recommend other Sam Peckinpah's movies first. It would really be a getting to know someone before I'm like, out of all the movies that Dino can recommend, you know which one I would recommend? It wouldn't be this one, but it wouldn't be Havoc. So I would recommend this before I would recommend Havoc.
Sure.
That's it. I enjoyed the movie. I enjoyed it, but I know it's not for everyone.
I'll agree with that, and I'll just go ahead and piggyback off of it a little bit for my final thought. Would I recommend this film to other people? I would recommend this movie to people who are Peckinpah fans and for people who enjoyed The Wild Bunch, which I think has one of the greatest opening scenes of any film in history. I think this movie is very gritty. It's very dirty. It's I can see how it is Peckinpah's favorite film that he made because he did have the freedom to sort of operate carte blanche and sort of make the film that he wanted to make and imagine, and he probably accomplished that thing. This thing still holds up as being a pretty dirty, nasty, gritty movie with people who are just trying to survive a dirty, nasty circumstance, and they're doing what they have to do to survive. And there's some pretty nasty meanies in this movie. So would I ever watch this thing again? I would watch it again, maybe as a reference for myself, for films or for like something that I want to create. There might be some things that I want to steal from this thing. Yeah, I did like it. It's a slow burn. Once it picks up, it really gets going. I also enjoy what Dino said. I'll piggyback off of it that I like that they actually cast Mexican people to play the Mexicans. You know, it's weird to say that, but that's Hollywood for you. But also, Peckinpah made this thing outside the Hollywood system, so he probably wasn't pigeonholed into casting anybody's, cousins to play Mexicans. So yeah, this is an interesting movie. If you're a cinephile, this probably needs to be on your list. So with that, I'll pass it along to Kris for his final thought. Professor Kris.
I only have one thing to say. I didn't feel that there was any propaganda in this movie whatsoever. I felt like
way to save it for final thought. We're like an hour in, and now you say there's no.
Oh, they're never gonna see it.
Right.
I felt the same thing about the energy. I think this movie is completely different if the energy was high level the entire time. I think if they remade the movie, it would be high energy the entire time. And also, just echoing what Michaela said about the relationship between the director and the actor, and having done multiple films has hits a lot. There's a lot of directors who love working with certain people, and it's interesting to see them in different roles with the same director and how much, how different they can be, how diverse they are. So like the Leonardo DiCaprio, Scorsese, like that kind of relationship. So for me, it was a fun little film. I don't know that I'd recommend it to too many people, because I feel like it's something that they could be turned off pretty early on. And I can definitely see why it was controversial at the time. But I thought it was an interesting little film.
Awesome. So I do have a question for Steve, if that's okay with everybody, before we end this thing. Yeah. Totally. Steve, what do you got for us next week?
Next week, I don't know why you asked me. It's not my turn. It's clearly not yours because you picked this movie. It is Michaela's turn.
Hey.
Oh my gosh! All right, so for next week, we are going to do a nice 1950s thriller called The Night of the Hunter.
Night of the Hunters. All right.
Ooh, I like it.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this one.
Robert Mitchum and Shelley Winters. I've never seen it.
Me neither.
It says directed by Charles Lawton. All right.
Yeah, and it's presented by Paul Gregory. So we're going to the 1950s, y'all. For El Dondino, Kris and Professor, Jason Eccles, The Fly from Mr. Garcia, Michaela, and Steve Des TV. We'll catch you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.